Howdy, this is Rob, learning disabilities and mistakes in leather crafting. This is my morning walk. It's Friday, I think it's the 17th. Anyway, as you can see, I'm on the beach like I have been every morning and doing my walk. So yesterday morning when I was doing this, I was pretty dang down. And one thing that's been constant my whole life that I can remember is some kind of sports. As a very young kid in grammar school, I was playing a sport we called soccer, which was a little red rubber ball that you hit with your hand, not with your feet. Or some people called it sock ball, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's kind of like a form of baseball, but just a little red rubber ball. Anyway, soccer, kickball, as far as I can remember, trying to shoot baskets. I was so little and scrawny that I had to throw it with both hands. Anyway, that was, like I said, some of my earliest memories. And it evolved into playing basketball more as I got bigger. We played a lot of strikeouts, we called it, which was just a rectangle box on a brick wall at school. And one person would stand there and bat. The other person would be pitching. So all it was just two persons. We called it stationary or strikeouts, what do you want to call it. And say one person pitched, the other one swung. And you could strike each other out. And also we played with the tennis ball, mind you. So, and the batter could hit a grounder, the guy could catch it. There was different ways of scoring base hits, doubles, triples, all that kind of stuff. We also played stationary in softball because the schoolyard I grew up in, we only had left field. The yard was divided in half by a fence, so we didn't have right or center. Kind of had a little bit of left center. If you hit it past the flagpole on the left side, it was legit. Anything on the right side was foul, or I'm not sure if we called it a foul or just called it out. Anyway, and always throughout all this was basketball. We had a basketball hoop set up on one of the telephone poles across the street from my house, and I used to just throw baskets, balls at it in the earliest age I can remember. And then somewhere along the line, it was hitting tennis balls with a racket against a big cement wall across the street from my house. So again, it was always some kind of physical activity, exercise. And so growing up in the schoolyard, we played all the American sports. We didn't play soccer with the feet because it wasn't a sport growing up, and at least not in San Francisco when I was a kid. I mean, it was international, obviously, but back then it just wasn't a sport, so we didn't play it. We did attempt a couple of times at one point where this one family moved in and they played soccer, but that was like once or twice, that was it. Anyway, it was always basketball, stationary, either strikeouts or with the softball. We used to play a lot of touch football in the streets. We would also play tackle football on Sundays after it rained, I guess. Would be go to Excelsior Park and play tackle football. And obviously I was one of the skinniest, scrawniest kids around. And it didn't matter. Just everyone joined in. And usually the person that was the cleanest after it was all over, they got dragged through the mud just for a kind of little ritual thing. And it wasn't a big thing, but as the kids would say today, it was all good, which I'm not a fan of that saying. Anyway, so like I say, sports was always a constant in my life, and it still is. physical activity. And yesterday, like I say, I came down in the morning. I was pretty down and beat, and which I have a tendency to do when my learning disabilities kick in, which pretty much kick in every day. Some days I can ignore it, some days it's not so bad. But like I say, the other night when I found out that the latest two card wallets that I had made or constructed or whatever you want to call it, and I'm so proud of one of them, how I felt like it turned out so dang good. And I made another one, and I was kind of proud of that one. I thought it was pretty good too, not as good as the other one. And then I found out with the second one I just had made, there was some major flaws in it. First of all, the card slots were way too tall, so the credit cards just disappeared in the slots, which is not the way it's designed to be. And boy, that really sent me in a tizzy. And then I also found out that the gap between the two different sides of the card wallet runs down the middle was not correct. The top was wider than the bottom, and it was very obvious. Why or how I didn't see that when I was constructing it, I don't know. And then, like I say, I found out the other wallet I made prior to that, which I was so proud of and patting myself on the back for. I found out the same thing. It was too tall. The cards would just disappear into the slots. So again, that threw me in a tizzy the other night. And then also I was cutting patterns that were, I cut them over and over, and they'd still keep cutting them too short. Anyway, that night was, it was kind of a Super Bowl of anger and frustration. And like I say, the learning disability thing was rearing its head, and it was strong. And again, I don't try to do it, but something in me, and for the lack of better explanation, I want to say it was fear. I get afraid that I'm not going to know how to do something, so I think I tend to rush it because I just want to get it done and hope, just kind of like by luck, that it comes out right. And again, that's just my guesstimate. So anyway, yesterday morning I was in a really bad funk. But as I talked in the video, I quit the video and I just kept walking. By the time I finished my walk, again, the exercise kicked in, the endorphins, whatever it is that happens. I didn't feel as bad. I knew it was still there, but I just felt a little better physically, I guess. Because I guess the body sends out the endorphins or whatever the chemical makeups are. And like I say, I didn't feel so bad. I felt like, well, fuck it, I fucked up. Let's move on. And again, I felt pretty good about the long walk, so it kind of canceled each other out slightly. So I went back to the shop and continued working on a new one. Anyway, it's still one of these things where it just never goes away. Some days are better than others, and I hate to equate it to alcoholism, whereas you never get cured, but you can, get reprieve. And someday, I guess that's how it is with the learning disability. Some days it's not so in my face, but most days it is. And again, the exercise generally will keep it at bay. Like I say, I always, still to this day, I'm still running, I'm still training with weights, pull-ups, push-ups, whatever it takes to get that physical activity going in the body. And it's my most constant thing that I can always remember. Well, like I say, not knowing how to read and write, that's pretty constant too, but I could always kind of not deal with that, because generally speaking, I didn't have to read and write and do arithmetic every day. So, but the physical activities, exercise, is something I've always had to do. And I've had a few breaks here and there when I was really into drinking and drugging. But once I got sober, I got back on the good foot. Pretty much. There's been times where I've missed days here and there, but I've always been consistent. And it still works. But anyway, so I'm trying to make these videos. I'm trying to relate them to leather crafting, because it's just a form of learning. And after plus 5 or 6 years of doing this, more part-time than anything, I'm starting to get a little glimpse once in a while of progress. Like, my stitching for the most part now is pretty consistent. I still make a mistake on where I start my stitch line and where I end it, how I burn the threads at the end, where I burn them, things like that. But I'm starting to I guess make progress. But again, the other day, like I said, I was feeling really confident and cocky that I was making some progress, and then all of a sudden I made those 2 card wallets, and both of them were basically wrong. I mean, I'm going to try to see if I can cut the threads out and cut the leather down to size and restitch it. But for the most part, I basically ruined 2 wallets and the leather that goes with it. Some might say it's just an opportunity to figure out how to correct it. But and I'm trying to look at it like that, but for the most part, I just get angry. I just can't figure out why I do it. But I know other people struggle with it too, and that's one of the reasons I want to make these videos, because I mean, I'm not alone. I know I ain't. But again, you know, until I went to AA, I never wanted to admit that, you know, I had a problem. It was just, if everyone left me alone and did it my way, it would life would be easier. But unfortunately, that's not the way it works. So I'm making these videos to help me, and hopefully somebody will hear it and it'll help them somehow. And maybe we can get a little community going. I watched a video last night, and there's this, I think he said he was a professor or a teacher, I'm not sure exactly, but on dyslexia. And again, I was never diagnosed with physical dyslexia. I was just diagnosed with a learning disability. You know, they never wanted to give me a title, so to speak, but it's kind of all the same. It just depends on who you talk to and what label they want to put. But my reading, writing, and arithmetic skills and the functions that the brain needs for those things are pretty much the same across the board. Some is a little bit different than others, the severity of it. But anyway, he was talking about the scientific things that go on in the brain and this, that, the other thing. And so I was watching it, and it was just blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I get it. Like I say, one thing I've learned, that I'm not a minutia person. One of the things I've realized, that the detail stuff is just what drives me really crazy. You know, the calculations, the intricate little details are what my brain just blocks out or just doesn't want to do it. I'm a big picture guy. You know, you explain to me as simple as possible the big picture, and I can get it and I can understand it. But you tell me to go down the street, turn left here, turn right over there, go up the stairs, go down the stairs, things like that. I almost immediately, my brain locks up. it just doesn't want to deal with it. And someone tries to explain something to me, they tend to put too much information in there. As soon as that happens, my brain shuts down. All of a sudden I just go blank. It's like the computer crashes. But if you tell me the big picture, why it happens and this and that, I can pretty much get that. Anyway, this guy was talking about all the scientific things that go on in the brain, and I was like, yeah, I don't give a shit about that. You know, fix it, that's all I care about. But I've learned that there is no fixing it. And then I watched another video, and he was trying to give hints on helping reading for dyslexia. And I wrote in the comments that, you know, with all this technology and all this knowledge out there, why do I still have to be forced into the box of learning how to read the way it's been taught to us for the last umpteen years? Why not just make information on video so that people like me don't have to read? You know, I kind of feel like they give us 3 dictionaries instead of 1. And it just doesn't make sense to me that the education system is still basically designed for people who thrive in that system. People who don't, like me, it's the most frustrating and unfair thing to do, because it's like I say, trying to get a kid that's got 3 left feet and put him into sports, and everybody in the sports camp is good, and they can never compete, never keep up. That kid is soon going to drop out and give up, and I don't blame them. But yet, people like us are forced to go to schools where they teach an education system that just doesn't work for us. And we're required to go to this thing every single day. We're required to play along with everyone else the way they learn. And if we don't learn how to do it, they give us strategies on how to cope, on how to work around, all these kind of things. Fuck that. Why don't they just make it so that a system where if you don't have those skills, find other ways to teach, find other ways so kids and adults can learn. But right now, it's still set up for the educationally coordinated brain. And they're requiring us to do the same techniques and skills and knowledge that they do. And maybe I'm alone, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think that's right. I think with all the technology out there, that they should be able to figure out a way to let people learn. And I hate the word education, because education to me just brings up school. And school is not a place that I've learned much from. Like I say, I've learned social skills, things of that nature, but for the most part, every single day, school was torture. Every single day, I felt lost, I felt afraid, and lost and afraid, for me, creates anger, and all those kind of things. And yet, kids and adults or whatever are required to do this, and it just doesn't work. But yet they keep coming up with new strategies on, you know, how to take tests and how to do this. And why don't they just change it? Why don't they just make it so that, you know, if that's not your thing, make it so that we can learn and not be educated, so to speak. Just learn. I still love learning. I'm always learning new things. But my learning is almost always visual. TV, movies, videos. The TV growing up was my biggest educator. I learned more from TV than I ever did at school, because school was all reading, writing, arithmetic, memorization, all those kind of things, which is not my forte or strong suit, however you want to call it. And people still say TV is bad for you. Anyway, books are, in my opinion, are bad for me. They're too hard, too time consuming, and mainly, for the most part, they make you feel like shit. They make you feel like, what's wrong with me? How come I can't do this? Everyone else seems to be doing it. But again, I believe that it's designed and constructed by people who have that skill. You know, back in the olden days, if you were a good farmer, that's what you did. You farmed. If you were good at school, you went to school. But now they say everybody has to have a higher education. Well, I believe everyone needs the ability to learn and have the access to learn. But the education part is the one I'm against, because it basically says you have to do it in a system that doesn't work for you. And that just drives me crazy. And you know, they talk about, I don't know, equal rights and civil rights and all these kind of things. Well, people like me, we don't get equal rights. I have been turned down for so many jobs because I couldn't pass the written test. Even though I've had 20 years experience in the job position, because I can't pass a written test, I don't even get looked at for a position. And I've had some places say that, well, we'll give you more time. That's coming from an educationally coordinated attitude. More time. Well, that ain't going to help. That's like telling somebody you'll give them more time to run a marathon. No, they're not going to run that marathon. It's just not the way it is. But yet, I'm held at the standards of an educationally coordinated system, and I don't have those skills and never will. And there's so many people like myself who are living in shame and in jobs and situations that they really hate. And a lot of people I understand in the prison system have some form of learning disability because they couldn't cope, they couldn't keep up in an educationally coordinated world, or at least the United States. And so they went to the easiest thing they could, which was drinking and drugging, and then that leads to stealing and criminal activities, and then they get in prison, and well, the rest is history. It's not a good place. So anyway, I'm going to continue to walk, and I'm going to continue to work on my leather and put one foot in front of the next. But again, I'm still angry, frustrated, and afraid. This is Rob, out.